It's hard to come into a group that's already kind of, the train is moving. Well,
Yeah.
I think she's been so open and honest, like I said, like about her marital issues, so to me has Mary, like, what do you think, like speaking of like, you and Seth are in such a great place now, and like the show actually helped when like someone like Mary says, like, there's Robert Sr. and I would love to change everything about him.
Yeah, I mean, Mary's dynamic with Robert is it's an unusual marriage. It's not the thing that you hear every day. Um it's worked for them for a long time, and if it's not working anymore, they need to make some changes to make it so that it does work. And what that means is I can't answer. That's something they probably at this point in time may not even be able to answer. It's something that takes time to work through and figure out. And so, it's not all that different from Seth and I. We had to really take time apart to figure out how to make it work together. And it sounds like that's kind of the space they're in right now, because it sounds like they're having doing better when they're apart. And maybe it's not meant to be. I don't know. I can't answer that. That's up to them. But sometimes it's you have to take a step back, regroup, take a look at the relationship. What am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What's working for me? What's not? Get rid of what's not. See if you can keep what is. And if you can't, then you got to move on.
Totally. Do you think Mary is misunderstood amongst the viewers?
I think more so last season than this season. I think people are starting to understand her a lot more. I think that I think a lot of people were very put off by her marriage because it is unusual, and it was something that they hadn't heard of. Um and so I think that like they almost like attached a stigma to it, you know what I'm saying? And so they didn't kind of like go in with open arms to her, and they sort of were shut down and closed off. And and she takes a minute to get your head around, because she's probably the most present individual I've ever met in terms of, I mean, I know she fell asleep at reunion. That's not what I mean, I mean in terms of emotionally present. She says what she's feeling in the moment, and she's can be sometimes brutally honest, and it can be harsh, and but and sometimes she's feeling that in the moment, but she doesn't really mean it, and then it slips out because she's feeling it, and that's just who she is and how she says it. And you have to have a little bit of thick skin. You have to understand that that's like how she's feeling at that moment. It doesn't mean that that's how she really feels about you. And so I think it takes people a minute to understand her and who she is.
I would agree with that. I feel like I understand her more just from watching this season. Recently, we had this scene, where you were at Lisa's event and Cam came up to you and, said he was in Mary's church and now he's not and he suffered harm and beware. You seemed really upset from that scene, Meredith.
I was extremely shaken up from that scene. I just like it was a lot for me. I didn't understand what he was trying to say exactly, but I felt like I kind of knew that it was just not real positive. And it was just very, very uncomfortable and rattling, because I had never met him before. um you know and I didn't really understand like what was the message, and then I mean it's terribly sad that he passed shortly, thereafter, a few months later. And that's just like kind of crazy. And then as you learn about some of that stuff, it's not my story to tell, but he did have a medical condition that could potentially impair his perception of reality. And I'm not saying it was. I can't speak for him. I can't say that it was, but I also can't say that it wasn't, knowing about that condition. And so, as I start to digest everything and think it through, I'm like, I got to drop this. Like, these are cryptic comments from someone who potentially may not be a very reliable source, not because he's a bad person, but because he had a condition. And And so, it was really very difficult for me to hear that stuff, especially just like from someone I just met at Lisa's kids' party, and it was just a lot. It was so unexpected, and yeah, I was
I mean,
blindsided.
it seemed like a lot, and it seemed like you were blindsided. What about, and I'm not coming for Mary, like all this stuff that's always out there that her uncle Ernest says, she's running a cult, like I'm sure you've seen this stuff all over online.
Yeah, I've seen some of it. I'm sure there's a lot more than what I've seen because, I only pay so much attention, I'll be honest, because there is so much stuff being put out there by everybody. And, so some of it I see, some of it I don't. I have seen some of it. Um, I don't know what to say to any of it. I really don't. I mean, you'll see um how Mary responds to this stuff at some point in the future. And at some level, I mean, look, people call, and I'm not going to pick and choose, but people call a lot of religious organizations cults. And I can't answer you. Uh, if people are there against their will or doing things by coercion that are against their will, things like that, yes, that is a problem. If they're afraid to leave for their safety and well-being, yes, 100% that's a problem. I haven't seen it. Like, anyone can label anything. You can say it's whatever you want. You could say that our political party's a cult. I don't know, anything. Anyone can say anything. Show me why you're saying this. Give me something concrete, because those are big statements to make. That's her family, it's her business, it's her faith. And if it's true, yeah, that's horrible. But just to label it doesn't hold water for me. Everybody's so busy labeling. Tell me why you're saying it, and then we have a conversation.
I would agree with all that. People have a label for everything. So like when you read that, or like when Cam is there in that scene, that right, like that doesn't change your like opinion of Mary, like, or anything like that.
No, I mean, I'm definitely shaken up by it. You can see that. I'm definitely rattled and upset. And of course, I'm sitting here like, what is this guy talking about? Like, why is he saying these things? And so it's very upsetting to me. But he doesn't say anything. It's very cryptic. Just saying, I know her really well and be careful is just like confusing.
It's like passive aggressive almost, I
Yeah,
feel.
I mean, it's just confusing. And I'm not saying that he had good or bad intent. I can't speak to that. I have no idea, you know, why this conversation evolved the way that it did. And maybe in some way I almost feel like he was cryptic because I think he kind of got in over his head, and didn't know what to say. I guess we'll see what happens, down the road, and if he has more to say, or if he feels that he was trying to kind of backpedal and didn't really want to go there. I don't know. I guess we're gonna find out. I have no idea.
Well, we don't need to hear any spoilers. I don't want to get you in trouble, or I don't want to get myself in trouble.
Well, I truly don't know.
Okay. Well, what about, you said like it seemed like it was out of left field. What about all of those people? I'm not saying it, all of those people online who are saying that, this is Lisa. Lisa set this up, made him, it's a good friend of hers, wanted him to confront you, partly because of this whole Google issue and the limo, where Lisa just kind of wanted to say, hey, Mary, like that is out there. I'm not saying it, but people are saying like Lisa kind of set this whole thing up where like, go and tell Meredith this. What do you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I can see where it definitely could appear that way to somebody. And I find it hard to believe that someone I'm friends with would do something like that, because I wouldn't be friends with somebody who would do that. So I just, I don't know. I can't speak to what happened, and exactly like why it unfolded the way it did and whatever else. Um, Lisa said that Cameron's very involved with Foster Care Utah. She says that he sits on the board. So, you know, I think that if you're doing a charity event with somebody who's on the board of that charity, you would invite them. So, that, you know, I wouldn't be friends with Lisa